This episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast is brought to you by Nomadicare. Now, personally, I love Nomadicare. I've used Nomadicare, and I recommend the company to all new travelers. What Nomadicare does is it takes the fear out of getting set up with a bad recruiter, which is the biggest fear that you have jumping into this journey. So they sit down, they interview recruiters, they vet them, get them on a list, and then provide them to you as a free service, as a free recruiter matchmaking service in order to get you started on your journey. Now, usually you only get 2 recruiters going through Nomadicare, but being a listener of the show, you can get 3. So this is how it's going to work. You go to nomadicare.com/Dylan. You will get set up with 3 recruiters to be on your dream team, as well as a guide to get you started on your journey.
The second sponsor of the show is TravCon, the Travelers Conference. I'm super excited to announce them as a sponsor of the show. TravCon was there for me before I got started as a medical nomad, and now I'm actually involved with the planning of the event. So super aligned, super congruent. I've been promoting them before they were even a sponsor, and so I'm excited to have them on. So there are 3 main reasons that you should go to TravCon this year. Number 1, value. This is the cheapest conference to go to as a medical professional. And also the only place that I've ever felt like royalty when you're walking in and all these staffing agencies and all these recruiters want to talk to you and you're bumping elbows with these travelers and they're interested about your story, about where you're coming from and what you're doing. And it's overall just a really good feel-good event. Number 2 is education and growth. So this conference was founded on the realization that there's a lot to know to be a medical traveler, to be a medical nomad. And so this is where you go to get the most updated tax information. This is where you go for those really niche specific questions on what's it like to travel in an RV and what's it like to travel to Hawaii. And then 3rd, community. This is where a lot of my traveler friends that are very near and dear to my heart right now, this is where we met. So this is where the relationship sparked. It's also one of the only places that you get to go to and see the leaders and meet the leaders of the industry, both on the staffing agency side and on the traveler side, and also get to meet your recruiters face-to-face that you've been working with. So TravCon is always in September every year. TravCon is also always in Las Vegas. The link is going to be in the show notes for you to get your ticket. I'll be at TravCon. All my friends will be at TravCon. I hope to see you there. Hey Nomads, this is Dylan coming at you from San Diego. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dylan Callier, and this is another episode of the negotiations series, talking today about understanding how much you can actually make as a traveler, and then really understanding what the limitations are. So why can't you earn $200,000 a year as a traveler? Well, it's because you don't get paid as much. Your services aren't as much as that for a hospital pay you per hour. So I'm going to talk about some limitations. The first big limitation is bill rates. So bill rate is the big chunk of money that comes from the hospital, the big coffee pot per hour, as Laura says in Nomadicare, the big chunk of money that comes in per hour that goes towards you for your services. So depending on the industry, the modality, the specialty that you're in, depends on how much you get paid. If you are on the radiology imaging side of the spectrum, and currently right now, speech language pathologists, you're earning pretty good money. We're seeing a lot of bill rates coming through that are greater than $2,000 a week. You specialized nurses, cardiac ICU, neuro ICU, things like that. You guys also are seeing really high bill rates coming through, letting you take home, again, take home $2,000 plus per week. That's awesome. That's really good money. But if you are, say, kind of in the therapies right now, especially being a occupational therapist assistant or a physical therapist assistant, unfortunately, those bill rates are not as high. And so you will be lower within that grand spectrum between all the specialties. And so the first limit is the bill rate. The hospital will only pay so much per hour for your services. Now, each specialty will have their own average, but the grand average for all specialties is around $65 an hour. So that is the average that per hour that the hospital is paying for you to work. Now, depending on how many middlemen there are, there are things like VMSs and MSPs, and they will get the job first, and they will promote that to the staffing agencies. So if they get the job first, they'll take some percentages out, and then they give it to the staffing agency. The staffing agency, between the taxes that kind of come from the exchange of money between the hospitals and the VMS, now they get the money, and they first pay all of what it takes to run a company. So it's no longer the bill rate. Say it takes, you got to pay for workers' compensation, you got to pay for overhead, you got to pay for everybody's salary to work there. The larger the company, the bigger kind of the price that they'll have to pay. It's not really correlational with, I used to think that bigger companies kind of pay less and smaller companies actually pay more. Really, as I'm getting more into this, I'm not seeing a correlation with that. So but in this instance, if it is a bigger company, they do have a bigger overhead, and so they have to pay themselves first in order to keep the business going and to continue to serve the travelers like they should. And so the remainder of that is called gross profits. And then after gross profits, that's when you get it as a traveler. So gross profits, then the percentage of profits is usually around 20-25% for the staffing agency. So they pay kind of themselves first, bare minimum, what it takes to run that agency. Then they take 20-25% on top of that. And then now the remainder of that gross profits goes to you as a traveler. And so that's kind of where the limitations is. If it is a bigger bill rate, if it's closer to $70 an hour, $80 an hour, then you can have a greater sum of money at the end that goes towards you. And ultimately, you're still making the majority of the money from that bill rate. It's just not going to be that $65 that's coming straight from the hospital. And so you have to realize that there are percentages that have to be kind of taken out in order for the system to keep working like it is, in order to have that dream team recruiter on your side, in order to have the staffing agency provide those benefits to you for health insurance, and also be there to kind of catch you if you fall, if that hospital kind of cancels on you early. You're supposed to be there for 13 weeks and, the 30-day notices and stuff like that. So those are the staffing agencies are the ones that are standing up for us in that sense. And they are the ones that are expected to kind of come around and help us if a hospital doesn't hold up their end of the agreement between them and the staffing agency will most likely step up, do the right thing, and help out the traveler. Now, the second limitation is how much money can you actually make, especially if you have a tax home, especially if you qualify for tax-free money. How much can you make tax-free? And so we have this limitation set by the bill rate, and then we also have limitations set by the government. And so if you go to gsa.gov, you can find out what those limitations are. And so this is actually something I haven't heard. It was a big topic when I first came onto the scene. Now I haven't heard it in a while, but there is a cap on how much money in per diems and stipends that you can be paid based on the area that you're at. So gsa.gov is a website, and it'll break that down for you. And it'll show you what is the max that you can earn underneath your meals and incidentals per week, and what is the max that you can earn per your meals and incidentals for your housing per week. I believe it's by weeks. I haven't actually been on the site for a little bit, since a couple contracts ago. And so ultimately, usually the bill rates will be the first limitation, and you won't actually hit that GSA limitation. But if you have a really high bill rate in an area with low cost of living, say in the Midwest, the bill rate could be the one that limits you for the tax-free money. Anything exceeding that limit set by the government just means that you'll be taxed on that. Or you have to get savvy and you have to get creative, and maybe you can ask for it in a reimbursement. Say it's going to cost you $1,000 to drive all the way to the Midwest. Or say you have a CEU course that you took that you can be reimbursed for. So it's things like that you can use it towards. But usually the bill rate is the first limitation, especially in the California area. The bill rate will be the one that limits your money, not the GSA. And then even, I say that the government limits it, how much you can make, but it's not how much you can make, period. It's how much you can make tax-free. And so that is a website that you can go to, and that you can go to for every contract to make sure that you're not exceeding that and putting yourself at risk if you were to be audited. One last thing I wanted to cover in this episode. And it's something that I see in the Facebook groups, not my Facebook group, but other ones that I've joined, and specifically for more so on the travel nursing side. I haven't seen it too much on the therapy side, but I have seen it. So it's not only that, but it tends to pop up more on the nursing side. And it's the reason that bill rates are dropping is because younger traveler nurses are accepting these really low ball rates. And that's the reason the money's going down. Well, that is false. That is not true, because if you think about it, with the travel industry right now, we have the most information out there ever to help you as a traveler. You can Google search. There are plenty of blogs. If you don't like to listen to podcasts, you're listening to me, so I'm hoping that you like podcasts. And so now you have multiple avenues on how to receive all this information. And we have the most educated travelers right now than we ever have. There's less half-truths out there. There's more leaders stepping up and saying, this is how we want to see the industry run. And so because of that, a lot of newbies are coming in really educated and knowing what's fair and what's not fair. So to say that newer travelers are coming in, newer therapists are coming in, newer nurses are coming in to accept low offers, and that's the reason that the bill rates keep going lower, is false. So what they are probably referring to is that they're seeing that their overall pay per week, their take home, is going down comparatively to maybe 5-10 years ago. And so what has been happening within the last several years, last 5 years, 10 years, that would cause hospitals to be more maybe stingy with their money? Usually this is due to law changes. And so there are big Medicare reforms going on. There have been some big Medicare reforms going on the past couple of years. And they're going to be rolling out later this year in 2019. And so we're expecting a dip, not a drastic dip based on the kind of the experts. There's expert analysts that kind of look at this and are able to approach staffing agencies and kind of tell them what they think in order to protect themselves. So we are expecting the hospitals to be a little bit more conservative with their money spending. And so maybe they won't be hiring as many travelers. It's all based on the market. So if the market is good, if hospitals are feeling good about their money, if they're making a lot of wealth, then they can hire more travelers. If a new Medicare reform comes along and they're not quite sure what's going to happen, even if it's not a bad reform, even if they're just like, we're really not sure how this is going to play out, they're going to get more conservative with their money. And that's why bill rates are dropping, not because of newer travelers taking lower bill rates. And so that is kind of my spiel on knowing what the limitations are and what's really keeping you from earning, the grandiose $200,000 a year that I've seen thrown out there. That was really just one time. And a lot of people realize that that's absolutely bogus, and that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. But that's what keeps you from earning more as a traveler. Ultimately, is the bill rates, and then the gsa.gov for your per diems, for your tax-free money, for your tax-free reimbursements. And so if you enjoyed this episode, thank you so much for joining. You can catch the rest of the negotiation series on iTunes and on Spotify, any of your favorite podcast apps. And for those that want the early access to these episodes, moving forward, you can always go to YouTube and subscribe there. And any subscriptions, any reviews, any likes, comments, heart symbols, it definitely helps more people see this information. So if you want somebody to see it that says that the reason bill rates are dropping is because of newer travelers, and you're a newer traveler and you're like, yeah, no, you're wrong, go ahead and show them this. And the more people that we can reach, ultimately the more people that we can help elevate this industry. So thank you so much, guys, for your support. It means the world to me, and all you nomads have safe travels.